promised I am going to be painting with your supervision, I hope, because otherwise it's unsupervised painting and that's no good. So what's going to happen today is a brand new design called Blaze a New Tomorrow, one of my designs from my Random Adventures of the Mind series. And so I've traced that onto my calico and I am ready to start painting. So this is unwashed calico or muslin, and I've got my sundies ready. My sundies, when I paint with them on unwashed calico or muslin, they act just like I'm painting watercolour style. So I've got my brushes, my favourite brushes, got my water, got my paints in my ice cube tray, and I've traced my design on with a friction pen. Later on I will outline my design with a Sharpie pen. I've got paper towel ready, I've had my coffee, I'm ready to rock and roll. Okay, let's have a look at this one. So it's going to start out looking a bit nothing until it gets going, because, you know, it starts out very plain. But this is unwashed calico or muslin, and that is what's going to give me absolute control of this design. So where do I start? I'll start with what I already have in my mind that I know. Well, there's a flame down here, some fire, so pretty damn sure I want that to be an orange flamey colour. So I'm going to dive into the yellow. Whenever I'm using yellow in a mix, I go for the yellow first. And just remember, these friction pen marks are going to iron away completely with the iron. That's what ironing away means. And they'll disappear. So it doesn't matter if I've painted over those lines. And they're great for marking my designs with, because they're just like working with a normal pen. So we all feel very at home with a, you know, ballpoint pen in our hands. Okay, see how I can get that colour to move and do magic things? That's because this is unwashed calico, or my American friends will call this muslin. Sometimes I randomly stop talking because my brain actually is concentrating. Believe it or not, you know, you might find that hard to believe. There we go, I'm liking that. Whoa, look at that. So down here, I'm going to put some pink in. My goodness, why not? I presume you're getting all that on the screen. Yes, beautiful. Oop, and I have to try and not bump the screen. Really sorry about that. There we go. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I suggest you do, and click that little bell for notification so that anytime I go live, you will know about it, and you can then choose to completely unsupervise me or supervise me as requested. There we go, that's good. Now, with any of this kind of painting, what I suggest is to consistently work randomly. I know, crazy. In other words, don't paint something right next to that. Like, for instance, that background section there. I have to wait till this is dry before I can paint that section. So randomly go somewhere else. So I'm going to come over here, and I just saw that yellow center of a daisy. And it's got to be a yellowy orange colour in my mind, with a teeny touch of green. Well, teeny touch. There we go, I don't mind that. Okay. Now the petals of that daisy are going to be white. So in actual fact, I need to eventually paint the background, but not the petals themselves. So that's a little something to think about. So I'm thinking about it right now. So I'm going to touch the purple, only the teeniest, and use a bit of water. I just want those petals to have just the tiniest hint of colour to them. Oop, that water went in, that's okay, we'll see what happens. I'm going to take that purple just the tiniest of touch and help it a bit. So I've just got water on the brush, so that means it kind of waters that down. So it's just a little touch of it. And if I thought I had put too much on, look, magic. While it's wet, I can remove some of it. But you'd never remove it completely, but you'd remove the intensity of it. So I'm pretty happy with that. When that's dry, I'm going to come back and do some more yellow back in the middle. Just going to take that bit off there. And as always, the colours will dry a lot lighter. So even when you look at it and think, oh gosh, you know, I've gone a bit heavy-handed there, the colours will dry even lighter. They always look darker when they're wet. Wetter when they're dark. What are you talking about? Okay, now for this fork, because we've hit a fork in the road, I am going to use water first to paint that fork. And that'll help the colours spread because there's already water on there. So these dyes are of course water-based, and more water makes the colour move quicker and be lighter. And I want that fork to have a silvery grey look. So I'm adding black, but because there's extra water on there, that's going to move pretty easily without being a harsh black colour. And it's going to have that paler grey silver kind of look. Okay, I'm going to take that black up here. Just help it along the edges there to go out to the edge of the design that I drew. Quite like that being a bit darker on that side. And then take that black up in here. I'm going to give it a touch of blue, which can sort of symbolise silver metal, you know, kind of like it reflects the colours of the things around it. So I'm just going to have a little bit of that. And it's gone a bit mucky and grey, but that's okay because that's what I want it to do. Trying to make it look like metal. I might just take a little bit off. There we go, a little bit of that blue down here. Just the teeniest, like I have literally just touched my brush in the teeniest bit. Doesn't need much, and see that instantly spreads and mixes with the already wet areas. If those areas had dried, there would be no mixing. It would sit up on top and then it would visually mix because you'd have black with blue and they're transparent, so you'd see both together, but they don't physically mingle like they are when they are wet. I'm going to be brave and just, oh gosh, too brave. Okay, well, I think we'll live with that. I could dab it off, but teeny bit more black here. Sometimes you just got to be brave because we are on fire. This piece is actually called Blaze a New Tomorrow. And it's part of my series that I call Random Adventures of the Mind. Basically, I just have these crazy thoughts and ideas and concepts, visual concepts, and I have to get them out. So that's what this is. It's just a visual concept. Now, what else can we look at? I'm planning on the sky being dark. Okay, I'm going to paint the hourglass. So I've got that yellow on first, and then I'm going to touch it with this tan, which is like a burnt sienna. And then I'm going to come in with the purple. letting those colours mix and do their thing. Maybe even just a little bit of black on that side. And then the sides need to come down like those little side bits. I don't know, what do you call them? The vertical bits of the hourglass, you know. I'm sure someone's going to tell me. So listen, throughout this whole process, if there is a question you have, and I'm busy painting, so I'm seemingly ignoring your questions, please just put them in the comments and I will answer them as soon as this live has finished. Right, need to treat that bottom section similarly. Similarly. Gosh, what kind of a word is that? Now I'm trying to decide. This swirl of colour is on top of the bottom of the hourglass. Oh, you know what I mean. Right, sneaking in there. Coming in here with that. Taking that colour through. So I just kind of talk to myself. So hopefully you understand gibberish. And taking that purple there just to make that base a bit more of the brown, just so that it links to the top a bit more. Right, and then I guess it needs the base there. No, that was going to be full of sand. Okay, so I'm now going to dab out that section there, and it won't stop it from still trying to come in, but it means that bit will be lighter. So just that bit there and that bit there. Okay. Okay, I know what I'm doing. It doesn't look like it, I know. Bear with me. Okay, now we have to go somewhere else randomly. How's this going? So I just touch it, and if it feels cold, that means it's still quite wet. So another area that we can start playing with, I think, is the green of our daisy here. Now I start out with just a pretty solid green, and of course we don't want it to just be that green, so we're going to add a bit of yellow, because you know, green's not just green, it's always lots of variations of green. See how I can help that move? That's what I call tickling. Just kind of helps it move around. There we go. They're still basically green leaves, but they've got lots of variation in them now. And when that is definitely dry, I'm just going to use my very fine brush and just help that get up there. Oh, it's going to bleed. That's okay. We'll live with that. Oh, one more leaf. I heard you shout. Helen, there's a leaf. Right, let's get that one. Now I wanted that one to break through that surface of that book there, because I definitely want it to be in front. So that's what you've got to think about sometimes, is having things overlap in a design, so that definitely the flower, that means, is in front of this stack of books. Right, now I'd love to paint that stack of books, but I can't paint that one because it is touching that. So I'm going to move down the stack of books and paint them a few different colours. So they're meant to be looking like old-fashioned books at the library, you know, those classic, you know, dark green, dark reds, dark blues, you know, the books I mean, with the kind of fabric covers. So I'm going to come in here and paint this one. This one's called History. Delicately along that edge. I'll paint right over the top of the words because I'll, you know, tend to those later with my Sharpie. Have Sharpie with travel. Do not leave home without a Sharpie. That's just a, you know, general life hack. And damn good advice, really. Yeah, once you start listening to me talking, you might enjoy putting the mute button on. Right, a little bit of purple just to darken that, which implies the other book is sitting on top of it. A bit too much purple, so I'm going to just generally darken it. So I added some brown there, so which is basically a red colour, and that's kind of neutralised that down to almost just a dark. Okay, can't really paint that one yet. Right, we might have to move somewhere else. Okay, let's look at oh, bugger it. See, I can't contain myself. I'm going to paint that one. This one's called Old Habits. Now, if I'm super careful and don't touch that bottom edge, if I leave a teeny white gap, believe it or not, if I leave a gap, let's see, I'm having to rotate my hand in a stupid angle, but if I rotate that gap, will you listen to me? There, see that white gap? That's enough gap to stop that colour bleeding onto that colour, believe it or not, just like Ripley's. Okay, we're going to darken in there a little bit, make that sit underneath. Sorry. Oh, there we go. Okay, that's cool. Oh, look, see that? Three tiny little specks have connected, and that colour's going to move in there. But you know what? I don't care. I like it. That's how it's going to be. Okay, that's getting pretty dry. I'm going to start on this swirl. So what's happening is you've got a fork in the road and you've got to blaze a new tomorrow. So we're going to follow this path that you've taken from the fork in the road that goes past these old books. Little person watching, they're getting the glare in their eyes, it's so bright. You follow that path up here and it's a whole new kind of beginning, which is the daisy, a symbol of new start, new beginning. Bit of a comment on what's going on in Australia with our women's movements and equality for all. But otherwise, it's just a fun design. Don't think too much into it. I just like drawing these kind of surreal kind of things. Right, so I'm starting with that yellow. I'm going to bring it up here, going just near that fork. It's a fork in the road, folks. There you go, right up to that wing. And beyond that wing. Now, when that colour comes through here, that's actually, sorry, just bumped you again, inside that hourglass. So we're looking through 2 layers of glass right there. So that yellow has to be paler. Okay, as it scoots past there. It's going to come down here. So I'm just getting that first layer of yellow on, which also wets that area of fabric rather than just using the water. So it's kind of prepping the fabric for, where would that line go? That line there would come down here. Okay. Better check that on my design before I start selling the design to you. That's true, folks. You can buy this design. Not right now. It's not on the website yet. Right, so from yellow, I'm going to find some pink. Which is going to go to the red, which will give us a beautiful orange tone. Take that red up here. Let it be paler in there because it's looking through the 2 layers of glass. Not that pale though, that's a bit too pale, but you know what I mean. Well, it's a bit too strong. Anyway, we'll find a happy medium. So as long as that's really strong there. That's not in the glass, so that could be stronger. Sorry, sometimes I'm not talking to you, but I do appreciate your supervision, I really do. And now that colour is going to change a bit more. I want to get that purpley colour in there. And have to make sure that continues onto that side so that the path visually links up. See, I like that. It's going to be bursting beyond its borders. I just like saying that. Bit of pink in there so that the whole thing is getting warmer again in tone as it comes down this path. I'm going to put a bit of pink here too because I don't want those 2 areas to look disconnected, so I'm going to put a little bit of purple in here. That's cool. Right, bring that colour here. Trying very hard not to touch the flames. And let's bring that colour down. So that's good we didn't paint that book purple because we wouldn't see it. So carefully sneaking in there and carefully going in here. I'm going to make that green a lot greener later, because that's the women's movement colours, is the green and the purple. Yes, I've watched the Suffragette movie. I learnt something. I've just swapped over to the teeny little pointy brush just to help me get that there. Make sure that's the same. We're going to get a bit of that purple again, sorry, pink, just to connect those areas. Well, the light keeps changing. It's clouds are coming over outside. Can't control the weather, try as I might. How convenient is that my brush is the right width in there. And this should be just about dry, so I'm going to still be careful. She says, making a mess of it, but that's okay, because I want those two to sort of, the path and the blaze are kind of connected. Okay, I'm liking that. I like that coming around there. Right, okie dokes, what next? Goodness. Okay, that didn't do so well there. So I'm going to, yeah, it's not dry. When it's dry, I can help it along. Gee, I don't want to have to wait. You know me, I hate waiting. Right, bit more colour required up here. Now see how that's not blending in, because that area is basically dry. So when it's dry, you're just adding another colour on top. You're not having it blend and do magic watercolour kind of stuff. Which is what I want that there to be. It's almost dry. It's going to bleed, you know it, Helen, but you know, can't help yourself. Okay, pretty happy with that there. That looks okay. There we go. Okay, now the wings. Let's have a look at these wings. They're going to be basically white, but I'm just going to add a little bit of blue, because that's kind of symbolic of, if you're trying to do something white, you add a little bit of blue and it, I don't know, it looks whiter. I don't know. It's just how we draw things. And those wings aren't going to look anything until I've done the background, you see. So sometimes you can't make something white look whiter, but you can darken the background. So my plan is up here. This is going to be quite dark purples and moody dark sky up here, coming to this light point here, and then moving down. So those wings can be fairly plain, because it's going to be the background that defines them. The negative around them will be defining those wings. So just a little bit of blue with the water, just to help that be a very soft hint. Maybe a little bit more in there where they kind of connect together behind the hourglass. Okay, that's still quite wet. Now what you also might notice is that the fabric is really wrinkling quite a bit. You can see it's distorting. It started out flat, but that is wrinkling quite a bit. So that's because I have wet some areas and not others, and so the wet areas shrink and the other areas won't shrink until we have equally wet them with the colours. Now if there's an area that I'm not going to be wetting, like the rest of those wings for instance, I don't think I'm going to add any more water into those. When it comes time to iron the piece, that's where, when it's completely dry, I'll put it face down on the ironing board and use that bottle of water, that little, you know, a spritz, and just make sure that the areas that I've left white that haven't shrunk, that I've given them a spritz, they will then just shrink that little bit with the clear water on them. And then this will iron completely flat, believe it or not. It will actually iron completely flat. And then I will be able to sandwich it up and I will quilt it. And the quilting will add all the black line work, adding the drawing kind of thing back into it. So I will use the Sharpie, but then I'll also be quilting back into it. Quilting for me adds all that texture, all the line work, all the details. It's a secondary layer, because here I'm using a big fat brush, and then I'm going to use a Sharpie that's fairly, fairly fat. So when I do my stitching, we're talking a 1/10 of a millimetre stitch line, so I can add details and more intricate sort of sketching in with the stitching, because I virtually draw with my sewing machine, and you will see that not today but probably tomorrow when I get this piece ready for the stitching. So while we're still waiting for that to dry, I'm going to show you, these are sun dyes that I'm using. These are perfect for dyeing cotton and silk into all your different graded colours, scrunchy colours, salt effect, sun dyeing, so heliograph, there's a big word for you. That's when you paint the fabric, let's say pink and green, whatever, you put it outside with some leaves on top or something, and as the areas dry from the sun, underneath the leaves will stay a little bit wetter. It won't dry as quickly. So what happens is the colour underneath those leaves moves out to the drier areas. So underneath that leaf will be paler, and you get this ghost effect or shadowing, but it's not a darker area, it's a lighter area. So these are sun dyes. Now this is an Australian product that I sell on my website in sets. A set of 9 colours is only $72, but there are other equivalents that you might have in your country if you don't want to pay for the postage, but it actually works out quite well, because particularly for Americans, their dollar is stronger than ours. So when I say something costs $20, it really only costs you $15 in your dollars. Okay, so they're the sun dyes. These are the brushes that I like to use, and these are what I sell. These are a Tacklon, which is a synthetic. They've been dyed brown to look like real sable, but those 5 brushes in a set are only $20, and they are very good quality, good medium quality to do acrylic painting and watercolor or dye painting. Really good value for money, $20 in a good range there of squares and pointy ones. We call them round, Helen. Okay, and I've got lots of other goodies too. I actually even sell this fabric if you have a hard time finding the right calico. I sell this fabric as well, and the best way to test this fabric, and I'm going to try and do it now, is when we do a drop of water. I'm trying to do it right in the corner here. There we go. I'm going to bring it up to the camera without making a mess. Okay, see the drops of water? Are we seeing that? I think we are. See how they stay in beads? See how they're not sinking in? I could sit here for about 10 minutes with you, and those beads will not sink into the fabric, because the fabric's got a fair bit of sizing or starch in it, and that comes with the manufacturing, because this is a fairly cheap fabric. This is not a great quality fabric, but it's great. It has great qualities for what I want to do with it. So I'm always looking for cheap calico or muslin that when I splash water on it or flick water, it beads. So I go into shops and start flicking water and like blessing the fabric. So don't take it home and wash it like a lot of people will do. It's that starch or the sizing that's already in the fabric that gives us control. And while I've been talking, those beads are still sitting there. We could sit here for ages, but that would be boring. It'd be like watching paint dry, wouldn't it? But that's what you look for, is beading, not bleeding. Those colour, that water, if it had colour in it, wouldn't sink in until I actually brush it with the brush. Otherwise those beads will sit there for probably half an hour. Okay, so sometimes we want things to dry. Come on, dry. I want to continue painting. I get very impatient. Right, I am going to launch in and add the purples up here. Use your drip tray. See my drip tray? There you go. Whoa, wanting it to be really dark and solid. I'm going to paint over those stars, because then I'm going to show you how I use salt to create stars in my sky. And I'm not too worried about that edge there. I'm not going to make it absolutely perfectly straight. This whole piece is hand drawn and hand done, so I don't need perfectly straight borders, just approximately. Now the secret here will be to not touch. Don't touch it, don't touch it. There we go. Now I've really put a lot of purple on there. I'm going to add just a little bit of blue and just sneak up here. I don't want that to bleed in, so a bit more blue. I want that to be really intense. I don't mean going camping. Intense, get it? Oh. Look, I think I'm a bit of a comedian at times, but maybe not. As they say, don't give up your day job. Right, I want to bring that blue down here because I'm very aware of that purple there, so I don't want to bring the two together. So carefully coming in here with that blue. I keep putting my brush in the purple, not the blue. Right, and that can certainly get a bit lighter as it comes down because it sort of changes from being sky to being ground. You know, that's the magic of surrealist kind of work. It can be whatever you want it to be. A bit more blue. Right, so by adding more water, I've made that quite pale, okay? So water is like adding white to a colour. When you think you want to make it lighter, you add more water when you're dealing with watercolour or dyes. Right, I have got rock salt and dog fur. Let's get rid of that. So this is, I call it rock salt. Some of you might call it crystallized salt. It's the stuff that you put in a salt grinder. Okay, now this is all multicoloured because I've used it many times. What happens is a dry crystal, when I sit it on the wet dye, will drag the dye to it and change this from being flat purple to having these little kind of starbursts. Okay, so I'm just, usually I just scatter them, but for this I'm being a bit pedantic because I want that to look like stars, and that's going to give us these, oh, pretty exciting stuff. So what happens, yeah, the crystal will drag the dye to it because it's dry, so it sucks the dye. There'll be a dark dot where it's dragged the dye, and then there'll be a whitish area around it where it has taken the dye from the surrounding area. So we have to leave that on there for about 10 minutes and we'll come back to it and we'll see what it's done. So carefully moving this blue around. Now, if I completely waited for this to dry, I could paint right up close to everything, but because I'm doing it on the camera, you know, I don't want to make you sit there and just wait for 10 minutes. So that is why I'm leaving that little white gap. But I know I'm going to be filling that gap with my black Sharpie and my stitching because I do want it to get back to looking like this high impact, strong design that I started with. Okay, so that's my thinking. So in here, this is background, so I've got to make sure I bring that across. Ooh, right, bring that in here. Around the wings. And now it has to get down to a bit bluer so that it relates to that other side over there. Now you can also see that it needs to go in here. And in here. Now over on this side, I'm going to let it be purple, but with a bit more pink in it. So that wing that doesn't stand out, as soon as I put that negative space, paint the background of it, suddenly that wing is totally there. Now I'm going to put some pink in here. Which then has to come down here. So this is where our daisy is going to suddenly appear, because I'm going to be painting around all the negative spaces. So sometimes it's what you don't paint that becomes important. I'm going to get my smaller brush and come in here. So this is the blue coming across. But I want to get that blue up into here. And then have the pink transition to it. So get that pink. Right. So while those colours are wet, I can still add and change and move and push them, but once they're dry, they are staying put. So I'm taking a bit of that blue from there across to there, moving this pink a bit here. So while it's wet, I have a chance to kind of move it and help it along its way. Once it's dry, that is it. So that looks a bit dark, but that will go a bit lighter. I could take a bit off. So it will go to that colour there. So that blue's going to come down here a little bit. It's got to transition into that pink. Woo! That's a lot of pink. Oh, I didn't put the salt on up here. Why didn't you tell me? Gosh, you're meant to be supervising. You didn't tell me. Right, put some stars up here. I might even just have a bit of a hint of it down here, just so it just sort of helps the brain read all that as, oh yeah, it's sky. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? So let's see what happens with those. Might not do much, but anyway. Now down here, I want it to be dark. I want it to be dark. I sort of had this idea of it. Oops, sorry, I just moved that. Sorry. Of sand. But I think it's going to be dark. Yeah, look at that. Just decided dark. Because I want these books to stand out. And it to feel like there's a change going from the dark ages to a new tomorrow. See, I can make up anything to fit the scenario of what I've painted. Right, let's come along here. Yes, this is kind of like sand or ground. Yep, that's okay, that's transitioning. So I need that black to be in here. You see, people, I don't work this out beforehand. This is all done as we live. It's just happening. There's no pre-planning of this. So, you know, when I'm not sure what to put somewhere, it's because I'm not sure what to put. So, okay. Right, I'm going to continue that dark down here because then there's a matchstick there and I want that to stand out because it's the match that's been lit. What kind of English is that? Seriously. The match that has been lit to start this new blaze. Okay, and I do want that to be noticed. So I'm making it dark here so that your eye at least will go there. And I'm going to go right to the bottom because this will get, you know, later on when I sandwich it and quilt it, it then goes into a binding. So then that black will go right down into the binding. So no matter where I finish this piece, the bottom edge will be black. And I think that will draw your attention to it. I don't know if that's off camera or not there. Sorry about that. I'm going to take that right off the edge there. So no matter where we go, it's black. And the same here. Right, and then that is going to come up the side here. So that's quite dramatic with the blacks in there. I'm going to put a bit of black down here with the water, which makes it just a grey tone. Now I'm going to quickly water the edge of those black shapes because if I don't, they will dry as a hard finish line and I don't want that. I want that to be a soft transition to something. Just not sure what at this precise second, but I don't want that to dry with that hard edge. So I guess a bit of the green has to come down. Green? What are you saying? That's blue. What a fool. But obviously my brain just decided that this is going to be green. Just want to get a hint of that green in there so that the two areas relate to each other. You've got to sometimes work quickly because once it's dry, there's no going back. Well, you can go over the top, but you can't change it. Right, bring that green down here. Okay, right, now where are we going? I might put some of that salt down here, which will just stop that from being just, you know, blackety black, black, black. It'll just give it a bit of a texture of grey. I'm not sure if you're seeing that on the screen, but that's what I'm doing. Okay. Not real happy with how that's moving because that's obviously wet onto some quite dry areas, so I have to try and help it there. Now the middle of that daisy is looking a bit pathetic. Come on now, Daisy. Let's give you some oomph. Bit of yellow. Little bit of red. What colour's the daisy centre? And this is the purple, just a little